Welcome to episode 147. 100% accuracy, the most dangerous claim in translation. And that's AI or otherwise. So let's set the stage. On a call yesterday, I had one of these, AI conversations that perfectly captures the moment we're in as an industry. And we're speaking with a medical supplies distributor, and they told us they're currently using AI-based interpretation. The reason for the call is we noticed a fall off in the level of number of minutes they were using for telephonic interpretation. The kicker is he says it's free. And the provider gives us an option to switch to a human interpreter at just 80 cents per minute. Now, I know we don't usually talk about rates, but this is well below what folks are charging. And basically he says, if they feel the AI is not working, we just switch the human. And according to our customer, both the AI and the humans are great. So, all right, I'm not aware of that situation. There's no possible way that I could know everything about our industry. It's just not possible. However, I haven't heard of an API or some, AI-based audio bot that can handle the task of interpretation on demand on a phone call. There's plenty of platforms. There's Kudo, there's Interprify, there's plenty of Translinguist. There's plenty of them out there that you can set a meeting, you set your languages, an agent joins the call, and people can see their captions and their audio. But it's, sort of typically kind of a one-directional thing. It's not necessarily meant for conversation, the role that an interpreter handles. So we figure that that's sort of a dead animal. And my colleague asks, well, hey, let's talk about document translation. And I think this is perhaps what I think has me the most fired up. And he says, well, we've got that all stitched up as well. I'm using AI. And by the way, I'm not using ChatGPT or any of those mainstream models. Instead, I built my own model, and it's using, a foreign platform, not one of the ones from the US. In fact, I think they said it was Lovable, which is a website builder. So that was weird. And he says, now, I just want you to know we're achieving 100% accuracy. It's correct. I said 100%, not 94, not 95, not pretty good. It's 100% accuracy in medical translation. And when I mentioned to him that even highly trained domain-specific engines or models, this is a point in the discussion you could talk about machine translation, because believe it or not, machine translation still plays a role. You can train very specific, engines based on all human translation that you've had. Or you can do the same and build it as a model. You educate it with the content that you have. So when I mentioned that those engines typically plateau like in the mid-90s, and anything to get above the mid-90s is almost impossible. Like the pain to get another point of accuracy is so much more than to get a point from going like 60 to 61%.
Yeah. Going 80 to 81 is not the same as going 95 to 96.
It's just not. And so I happened to mention that, hey, by the way, we have our ISO 18587 registration, which essentially is where an auditor comes in and audits our process of how we handle machine translation or AI, or generated translation, and how a human in the loop reviews the content. And it's especially applicable in fields like medical content. And what he's saying just is impossible. So, he reiterated his thing. So I congratulated him. I said, hey, that's amazing. Like what you just did, Google, Gemini.
It's worth billions.
Exactly. I'm like, can I use your model? Because here's the thing. Gemini can't do it. ChatGPT and OpenAI can't do it. Claude can't do it. In fact, if you opened a chat window with Claude or ChatGPT and said, hey, are you 100% accurate in your translation? It would guffaw at itself and say, of course not. You can't do 100% translation. Now, the thing that strikes me on this, right, is the CEO wasn't on the call. And it got me thinking. So if someone inside a regulated industry like a medical supply company believes they've solved language risk completely with AI. What does that actually mean to the organization? I mean, I think there's some risk there. And that's what I think we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, the first place I went when hearing that is not every industry that needs language services is as regulated as medical. And I think medical is probably close to the top of most regulated in terms of industries, like finance and legal are up there too. But if everything is outsourced to AI, I would be very interested with where all that data goes and how that data is used to train the engine that they are using, because there's all the HIPAA rules that those of us in the US know about, of like not being able to share sensitive information outside of that room with the doctor, basically. So I think that's a big risk as well of knowing where your data goes with any AI tool and any AI workflow. It's like, okay, how's my data used? Does it train other engines? Like, what happens with it? Or does it sit in a silo, which is probably the best answer.
Absolutely, Patrick. I had 17 questions that I wanted to ask, but, the level of hubris is what sort of took me back, right? I mean, if it's tough to, how does the old saying go, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. This person was so confident in the fact that they had this problem stitched up. And, I want to be clear. So we kind of laid out the groundwork for this episode, but I want to be clear on one thing. This is not an episode to bash AI. Not at all. As you know from our podcast and previous episodes, there's a place for AI. There are so many really good use cases, and there's even one buried inside of what this client is trying to do. However, I don't know of any one use case where you can say, yes, we're going to completely rely on AI and I expect 100% accuracy. I mean, there's even use cases where you can say, we're going to rely on AI and we're not going to add additional funds, right? And we've talked about those. We've talked about those going back to machine translation. Is it a low-risk project that's not customer-facing, that's only meant for internal use? Or even it could even be customer facing, but you've got a disclaimer there that this is generated. And again, but it's a low risk.
Press one to get a human interpreter.
Exactly. It's like a low risk situation where it's okay if there's an issue and there's a loop that allows for a remedy in case there is an issue. Like those are all really good use cases, but this one is not. So
yeah, this sounds like the AI magic wand came in and fixed all their problems in a day, which seems hard to believe from the outside.
See, we've talked about the easy button, right? And the easy button is super alluring. It's like, yeah, this is great. I just put this over here and then I get this over here. It looks like Chinese to me. I don't read Chinese, but hey, this looks amazing. And that's part of it. So if we drill in, I mean, really, let's talk about it. There's no MT system or no AI model, public, private, open source, custom, or even lovable powered, that delivers 100% accuracy, especially in medical communication. It just doesn't exist. So I kind of wanted to dive a little deeper and think about this, Patrick. Like, anyone who's claiming this either doesn't understand how to measure quality for translation, doesn't understand the risk, because again, I think that level of confidence is where the risk is, or just lives in a different reality. Like basically you're misrepresenting reality. And it's really not, this is not one of those issues. It's not a philosophical issue, right? This is not one of those issues where, Patrick, when we sit around the office and, talk about some weird situation in grammar between German and English or English and Spanish, and, both situations are true, but which one is better? Or it's not that at all. Like, we're not talking about that type of issue. This is risk management, plain and simple. And it's big. It's big.
Yeah. I mean, that's also, excuse me. I think that's a core tenet of what any good PM will do, any project manager at any organization. Like, there's like the 7 foundations of being a PM. And risk management is definitely one of them. So I think, as we've said before, like, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And I think another another kind of hole to poke in that 100% accuracy claim is what language pairs, because obviously the more common languages or the more languages that are out there on the internet, maybe you're getting close to that. But some of those languages have limited fusion. It's funny, as we were talking, I on my other screen, I asked ChatGPT, I was like, if I asked you to do translation, would you be 100% accurate? And it said no. It said not me or any AI is 100% accurate. It said, though we're very good depending on the context. And where it said errors can come up is specialized domains, and surprise, surprise, legal, medical, and technical are the first ones. So
this is really good. This is the first time we've had ChatGPT as a guest too. I love it, Patrick. Thank you.
Well, then I asked,
thank you, Sam Altman, for joining. I appreciate it.
I would say, what percent accurate would you say you are? Just to have it give me a number. And it said for high resource language pairs, which is English to Spanish, French, or German, it says 90 to 95, and then it slowly drops down to the 70s and 80s in there. So, yeah, I mean, just asking it live, like, it's funny to ask the thing that's supposed to do this thing for you how good it is at doing the thing, and it's like, pretty good, but not perfect.
It's funny, isn't it, though? So if this person was simply bothered to ask the AI model, hey, where do you think it would go? So it's not just me, right? So that's good. You actually ask the source, and it'll tell you. And basically, I mean, you have to think about this domain, right? So the chat was just telling you a little bit about the domain. This is a medical supply. This is medical supply distribution, right? Mistranslation can have. It's regulatory. It's legal. It's patient safety. For God's sake, it's patient safety. So I'd like to dive down a little bit more into the conversation, because I think these conversations are going to happen more often for those of us that are in the industry. And, just some bullet points that I think we need to unpack and dissect a little bit. So he says, when he was talking about interpretation, it was allegedly free. So I think let's just go point by point. There is no free lunch, right? Isn't that the common adage?
You're paying with data, I would assume, then, if it's free.
Well, if anything that's free, it's usually, yes, it's part of a public model that you're shooting stuff out into the public domain, right? So we all know that if anybody who's used AI, and if you're on a free model as well, you're limited to the number of queries you can make, or whatever the case is. Say, well, hey, why don't you upgrade? And I do have news on that front as well. This is my opinion, of course. There's no way that these models, the big providers, are making money at what they charge currently. So think about this. I think our corporate seats on chat are like $600 a head, or $600 a seat. I forget what they are on Claude. Those prices are going to go up. The PE firms are plowing billions of dollars into this industry. And that point is coming, and it's already been coming. Hey, are we ever going to make any money at doing this? Or are we just going to keep building data centers and plowing money? Because at some point we need to make money, right? That day is coming, and we're either going to start to see ads. So now, just like Google and other, web experiences, our eyeballs are going to be the cost. Or you're going to pay if you're trying to do advanced things like translation and document, curation. I mean, you're going to pay, and you're going to probably pay pretty dearly. I mean, think of their positioning, right? The positioning on these things are like, hey, you don't need as many junior people in your organization. AI is going to handle everything. Well, they're going to start positioning it at the cost of what labor is. That's where they're going to start, and that's coming. That day is coming. I'm going to keep going, Patrick. You just jump in if you want to. So the human's at 80 cents, right? So that's a very, very low cost. And again, I would say that it's 80 cents a minute, right? So I think some of this stuff, like I think many providers out there are saying, I need to compete with free, so I need to go as low as I possibly can. Well, I've got news. Competing with free, you're going to lose. So that's not the right conversation. I think the right conversation that we as providers have to have is, what do we do differently than the fully automatic models, right? What do we do different? So you talked about domains.
Why is it worth 2 to 3 times what free is?
Exactly. So I just read something on Slater this morning, and he was talking about, I'm very curious. I want to listen to that podcast. He had, it's a new company that uses AI to do quick translations of very, very niche financial information. And it's like, okay, this person is really focusing on a niche, and I'm sure there's humans in the loop with AI, and they've created something that is very specific. So I think we're going to see more of that.
Mm-hmm.
The custom model, again, I would implore all of us that are in a position to educate, to help our clients understand what they're getting themselves into. Let's help them understand that with a custom model, yes, you're going to improve your chances. You're going to do better. Trained models, trained engines are always better than just going in cold. But 100% accuracy is absolute lunacy.
No, I think using the right tool to build that model too. I mean, we hadn't heard of the model that they mentioned, but quick Google search, everything about it says it's a web development tool, which is like, okay, why are we using, and maybe I'm just uneducated, but why are we using a web development tool to build a translation model? That doesn't seem like the right tool for the job. To me, that's like taking the computer system out of my car and putting it on my computer and expecting it to be a computer. Like, yes, it's very different functions, both computer systems still, but they do very, very different things.
Right. And I would argue, because he very much vacillated over the human in the loop. I mean, the idea there was, this was amazing. He's like, I just sort of ate his words. Like, nah, we don't really need a human in the loop because it's 100% accurate. I've tested it. So I'm assuming he speaks every language. So that's good. Again, hey, come on over. You speak every language at 100% accuracy. That's great. But, and again, I don't mean to poke fun, but it's just, I think this is a very, very risky conversation. Really, really risky. And that was just very off-putting because of it. And I think the second point was that the CEO was absent from the discussion, right? So for those of you that are buying translation and you're in a position, and this is a conversation that's gone on for 30 years. I mean, in the old days, I remember just thinking always like, do you know where your translation's been? I used to joke because that was like the thing, where your kids are. That was the ad that used to run at, midnight on the TV. There was that public service. Do you know where your children are? Well, do you know where your translation's been? It's the same thing with this. It's like, well, it looks great on paper. I mean, I don't speak every language. I am assuming that those that are in leadership positions across the board in translation or in, in corporate domains that have responsibility for translation, they don't speak every language. And quite frankly, don't have the time, even if they did speak every language, to review every word of translation coming through their organization. So understand the pedigree of where this stuff is coming from and challenge your providers to tell you where the pedigree, where does this stuff come from? How was it created? What were the QA measures? I mean, for God's sake, again, it's a medical distribution company. So, I mean, for me, look, and I want to be clear on this, I am not attacking the individual. I actually have empathy because I think, the person's heart was in the right spot. I just solved a massive problem for the business I work in, right? Their heart was in the right spot, and they're very proud of what they've accomplished. However, we're seeing this growing phenomenon, easy for me to say, only one espresso in, I need it far more, where operational staff is convinced that they've solved a translation problem permanently by just using AI. So it's, not to steal a word from the AI world these days, it's a hallucination. It's essentially a hallucination to have that level of confidence.
Yeah, that's I think you summed it up very well. And I mean, I'm thinking back to all the RFPs that we worked on throughout the years, and like generally the medical ones were like the most strict and had to answer like the most questions about them. So like you said, I think the idea is there to try and solve this problem, but the execution, I don't think anyone has solved that problem to 100% accuracy in any industry.
No, I
in
mean,
any workflow.
absolutely, people would love to, but I mean, I'm also more of the mind that celebrates that. Hey, absolutely, AI can be, again, just like your friend ChatGPT told you on interview earlier in the segment, that it can be very powerful in certain domains and certain language pairs, and that makes sense, and that's great. So that's again what I'm trying to stress. And maybe if we have a little time at the end of the segment, is that's what we can talk about, is that, hey, a well-used AI model can serve your business so well, but just understand where the holes are and how you're mitigating the risk, right? So that's what I think is important. And I mean, if we dive in a little bit more into that 100% accuracy fallacy, right? So just because we want people to understand, because it sounds cynical, and again, it's not cynical. It's just the way it is, right? That even the best trained MT systems. I mean, think of it this way. As I said earlier, if Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, DeepL, Meta, I mean, they're spending billions with a B, not with an M, billions in R&D, and they haven't achieved 100%. It is statistically improbable that a single internal model can achieve 100%. That's not sarcasm. It's just math. It's not. I know I've been a little bit flippant. I've been a little facetious in this episode, but it's not sarcasm. It's just math.
No, I mean, like, and honestly, if that prospect did figure it out, like, that is insanely valuable if they've made it to that point.
Yeah.
Like
Here's a job.
Billions, worth billions if that has been solved.
Any one of those 5 or 6 groups that I just talked about, or 5 groups that I talked about, would hire that individual immediately for a god awful amount of money.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to afford that individual. That would be.
But I think too, even separating out AI, like, no human translator is 100% accurate. Even having however many years of experience, like, people are just going to make mistakes over time, and language, as we've said, is generally subjective over time as well, and the meaning of things changes. So, like, again, kind of separating AI from just in general, like 100% accuracy is highly improbable.
Absolutely. I mean, and if we dive in, right, we've talked about different scores on here. We've talked about blue scores and MQM metrics, and they all showed diminishing returns, right? We spent a little time on this earlier in the segment, that they show diminishing returns around 94 or 95%, and that's in controlled domains. And terminology variation, just that on itself prevents perfection, right? So like, one person might refer to something as X, because remember, we're creating the content, right? So a human is that wild card. Even if AI were creating the content, the same thing. Not all AI models think alike. We all know that if you ask it to author something, let's say you ask it to help you with an email today, if you come back with exactly the same prompt tomorrow, it will likely be a different result, because again, it's always improving. So that terminology variation alone prevents perfection. Language it's basically probability, right? It's not deterministic. So again, what do these models do, right? I'm just as mad as your dog right now. So what do these models do? They're always trying to predict what the next word is. That's all these models do, is they're trying to put a string of words together, and it's all probability. It's all not probability, but it's all just based on what is it's the inference model. What do I understand about the topic? What did I ingest, and what is in my knowledge base, and what is the next word I'm going to write in the string of words in my response?
Yeah. It's funny that the terminology one made me think, as I'm holding my beverage, my Gatorade here. Is it a bottle? Is it a container? Is it a cup? All those things basically mean the same thing, but probably have a different word for them in a different language.
Absolutely. And it goes on and on and on. And we have to talk a little bit about the regulatory context, right? Because again, this was medical material. And as I mentioned in sort of the setting the stage, I talked about our ISO 18587 registration. It's important because why does that ISO standard exist? It exists because raw MT is not reliable for sensitive content. So the idea was there that if you put certain requirements around how people handle that content, you get better outcomes, right? So it defines the human post-editing framework. And medical content requires risk-adjusted workflows. What did you say earlier, Patrick? That what does a good PM do? Figures out how to mitigate risk. And usually that requires a really good, transparent, and candid discussion with a client to say, here are the workflows we've defined. They're all compliant to a 18587 to the 18587 standard. There's little variations in cost because of different human involvement or human involvement in building the model or whatever. There's all these variables that go in to a potential project, and a good PM is going to lay that case out.
Yeah, I think even more broadly, like any ISO certification is essentially a form of risk management for the agency that has it. It's not going to guarantee quality. I think that would be far-fetched, but it reduces like the probability of errors that come up, and it puts a process in place for when errors come up and what you do about it. So again, like anything, when you hear ISO, like think risk management, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely, Patrick. And skipping forward, I think I want to talk a little bit about the psychology behind this. And this was something I wasn't aware of, but there is the Dunning-Kruger effect in AI. And this is really interesting. And what it is AI gives people the illusion of mastery, but mastery requires validation, right? I think we've talked about this before, that, it's really this level of overconfidence in what that final solution is. And this is what I think about this here. I thought I observed something, and this is what was so off-putting in the conversation was I was being sarcastic, right? When I said, oh my goodness, congratulations, you solved the problem that Google and DeepL and OpenAI and Claude, Anthropic, they haven't solved it, but you did. Congratulations. He didn't detect my sarcasm, right? He was basking in certainty, and that's the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? It's not stupidity. Again, I want to make sure people understand that I'm not here attacking where someone stands, right? In fact, that's on us. Is where we need to educate them, right? But it's not stupidity. It's overconfidence, and it's fueled by a new tool. Wow, look at this. I do A, and I get B. It's like magic, right? It's surface level success. It's a lack of a measurement discipline. Like let's just pretend I could build a house. Looks like a house. It's got a roof. Guess what? When that first rainstorm comes and the house is leaking, oh yeah, I guess I don't know how to build a roof. I mean, that's what it is, that lack of measurement discipline. How do I know I was successful? And if you don't, that's what that human in the loop is. It's that standard approach to just make sure. And is what even Sam Altman, your guest question earlier, Patrick, suggested it, right? There should be a human in the loop.
Yeah, and I think you're pointing out too, it's a lack of depth, and it's a lack of nuance as well, of like, you could frame a house that has nothing on the inside, but from the outside it looks like a house. And then when you open the door and there's nothing inside besides 2x4s holding it up, still looks like a house from the outside. But again, once you walk in, there's nothing inside. It's not really a house. It's the frame of a house. So I think, again, that kind of shows the lack of depth of like, okay, let's look inside and see how and why we might have got to this level of accuracy. But then the nuance as well of like we said, great, maybe it's good for Spanish and German and French, but what happens when we get a language that isn't as common? Like, is this framework going to hold up to that?
Absolutely. And the last topic before we wrap up is, I touched upon it a little bit, the leadership failure, right? So I think, again, as leaders, that the CEO joining, it's not joining the meeting, it's significant, right? When executive leadership disengages from the AI strategy, operational risk increases, right? Because again, not out of malice, not out of ill will, anyone who's junior is like, oh, look, I solved this problem. This is amazing. And if leadership is only looking at those surface level results, right, that surface level success, they potentially are missing something that could harm their company. It could open them up for litigation for liability that they weren't aware of. And, usually these things, ignorance is not a defense. Oh, I didn't know we didn't have a human checking. So ask questions. For those of you that are in leadership roles and whatever uses of AI you're seeing inside of your organization, ask smart questions. How are we testing? How are we defining success? How do we validate that what we're going to put in front of clients makes sense? So if you're a CEO and you're in a regulated industry and someone in your organization says, hey, I've got 100% accuracy from AI, immediately that conversation should escalate. Start asking those questions. And that's not me being aggressive. That's simply a sober response. You need to do this.
Yeah.
Patrick,
I think
any closing thoughts before we do our big wrap up?
No, I think that just kind of brought up a thought of, again, especially in very regulated industries, I have to imagine that a company in the medical supply space has some sort of AI policy or strategy or something like that. So to see, and if they don't, they probably need to adopt one quickly. But like those policies exist for a reason, and they're to protect the companies, so you aren't making claims that can be refuted or litigated or whatever they might be. And again, I think it all likely says too, you have to disclose that you're using AI in those workflows. So I'd be very curious if that company has an AI policy or strategy.
Patrick, I think that's a really, really good question. And probably we could do an episode on AI policies and usage, because, that stuff's pretty complex and some thought goes into how you're using. You have to think of the whole organization, right? Because again, there may be some really good use cases where leaning on AI a little heavier makes sense. But I think you have to come up with sort of a global policy. And I would bet that company doesn't have one. And I would probably wager that a fair amount of companies don't have one. And, the scary thing for me is that, people could be using, it's like, hey, I know I can use this. I'm not going to tell my boss. I'm just going to use my own personal account or a free account. People could be using this in their job today. And that's what those AI policies are supposed to address, is that if you feel like you need AI to do your job better, then ask management and they'll get you a license. So at least it's controlled and monitored and it's private. Because that's, the bigger question. If you're using a free model, you could be putting your company at risk. And it could be something very inane. I need help with writing a press release and it's about a merger and an acquisition and it just gets chunked into a public model. That would be terrible, right, Patrick?
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the big wrap up, Patrick. What is your biggest takeaway from our little soapbox episode today?
I think, like we've said, for me, it kind of all boils down to like, this is not to say AI is blanketly bad or wrong or not accurate, but I think it's noting the limitations of the tools. And like AI is by no means ironclad, bulletproof, or airtight. Like mistakes are going to happen. How many funny hallucinations have we seen over the years of using the tools? And like, that's okay. I think if you acknowledge it's not perfect, like that's a great first step, but you can get pretty far with it. But I don't think it's come to the point where it's able to fully replace any translation workflow, really, human or AI powered or machine translation or anything. Like it just simply isn't. And I don't know that it ever will be, but if it is, it's, like you said, going to take billions of dollars of research and development to get it to that place, and years.
Yeah, I agree, Patrick. For me, again, I know I said it at the top of the segment, but I want to say it again. This is not an episode that is bashing AI. It's bashing how humans are using the AI, right? So, you have to, technology is powerful. It always has been, right? Since we've been starting this wonderful journey of computing and helping us to do our jobs every day. AI on its own is transformative, right? I've made many allusions or comparisons to machine translation. And yes, there is some commonality, but AI is far more. It is transformative. But the risk it introduces has to be calibrated or mitigated. And for me, human expertise in the loop remains non-negotiable in sensitive contexts. Yes, you can do, again, we talked about it. You can, in low risk situations, situations where it's appropriate, perhaps not having a human in the loop is okay. But for me, the bottom line is that AI should make these barriers imperceptible, right? And not introduce additional risk, right? That's the last thing you want to do is say, well, I know when I use, all humans, I've got these risks. They miss something, they do something, whatever. Let's not be fooled into thinking that AI doesn't have its own.
That the magic wand was waved.
Exactly. It looks good. It's the easy button, right? It's easy. But it should really continue on what our mission as an organization has been, is that we want to make translation easy, right? We want to make the barriers that language present disappear, right? That's been our mission for 30 years. And I think AI is just another, arrow in our quiver. It's another tool. We've talked about it many times. It's just another tool. Again, it's a transformative tool, but that's how it has to be used and respected.
You just gave me another one of where AI may fall flat is idioms with the arrow in the quiver.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, I would love to see what that comes, with a howitzer in my pocket. I don't know. Like, who cares? It'll come up with something very funny, I'm sure. So, all right. For this episode of Translation Confidential, this is Patrick and Peter signing off. Thanks for joining us.